The biggest thing that we seem to miss is that we are creators, that everything in your life that's going on to a degree, whether the biggest thing you did was move into that location or be with a certain person, we created all of that. We are part of that. So, it is that we create the reality that we're in. And if we can create one reality, that means we can create another. That I think the biggest thing is that we've allowed ourselves to believe that we can't change stuff, but you can. You may only be able to change one little thing, but you can change. And if you change one thing, you can do that and repeat that over and over again, and you can change many things.
I'm your host, Brandi Fleck, and this is Human Amplified. This is a show about our existence, our place in the world, what it all means, and ways to make it better. From big picture ideas that blow your mind to practical life advice, we explore it all. We amplify the voices of healers, survivors, mystics, disruptors, scientists, creatives, and everyday people like you and me to expand our consciousness and use that awareness to evolve into who we really want to be in the depths of our soul. Humans Amplified. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoy this episode, please go rate and review the show. And remember to subscribe where you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Support for this podcast comes from Bed of Nails. You've probably seen acupressure products before, maybe in your Facebook feed or something like that. It could be for any number of brands, but it's a fact that the Bed of Nails is the Swedish original. I've been using the Bed of Nails mat and pillow since 2012. I personally remember when no other products were widely available and when I was scared to even try it. When you lay on it at first, it can get a little uncomfortable, but that's short-lived. After a few minutes, your back gets warm, starts pulsing, and then starts to relax. You quickly get used to distributing your weight on the Bed of Nails, and it's nothing but a welcomed reprieve from a stressful day. Over the years, it's helped me increase circulation, relax, and reduce pain in my back and neck. I also use my Bed of Nails every single time I meditate, and I love it. If you feel like you would like to do the same, you can shop my Bed of Nails affiliate link to get yours. I have put that link in the show notes of the episode, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can find it in the description of this video. And there is also a discount code there for you where you can get 15% off at checkout. So be sure to go get it. For the links mentioned throughout this episode, check the description box on YouTube or the show notes at humanamplified.com/episodes/140. What does being human mean to you?
I think that's an interesting one because I think we get caught up in being human and we forget that we're so much more. That we are consciousness, we are energy, we are something else, and this being human is just a glove. It's like saying, Earth, our planet Earth, we think, oh, it's everything, but it's a tiny dot spinning around a ball of gas with billions of other balls of gas in the galaxy, billions of galaxies in the universe. So there's so much more, and we're focusing on one thing.
Wonderful. I love that. Thank you, everyone. Today we are talking to Sifu Boggie, also known as Paul Brighton. He's coming to us from Lincolnshire, England. Sifu Boggie is a Daoist guide, mentor, and self-healing practitioner with over 40 years of experience in Daoism and Qigong. Trained by renowned Daoist masters, he specializes in Qigong, Tai Chi, Shun Dao philosophy, and other healing modalities. He's also a barefoot-doctor, Daoist shaman, and teacher of Eastern Reiki, Chinese Reiki, reflexology, Tui Na, Titar, which is back correction, acupressure, and Shun Dao massage. Sifu Boggie's teachings blend Daoist philosophy with practical energy work and bodywork techniques, offering transformative pathways for physical, emotional, and energetic healing. And on today's show, we'll be talking about energy work for the everyday person. You don't necessarily have to be a practitioner to work with energy. We'll also be talking about how consciousness fits in and making sure you stay connected to the natural flow of universal energy. Of course, we'll let it flow. So if something else comes up, that's because it was meant to. So I am looking forward to seeing what Sifu has to say. Yeah. So before we jump in, what else do you want listeners to know about you?
Well, I very much so. So the word Sifu means guide or muse. You can in Google Translate it will say master of martial arts, but lots of words all have more than one meaning. Well, lots of things, and it's more like Bruce Lee once said, "It's like a finger pointing towards the moon. Do not look at the finger; because you'll miss all that heavenly glory." So as a teacher, I'm here to help you and put you along your way, but I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do. You know, you can do the stuff I do. I've got I've got probably 1,000 qigongs under my belt, so I've got different qigongs or different techniques for different ailments and injuries. But ultimately, you're symphony, so it's up to you. So
Okay. Where does Boggie come from?
so in the Chinese martial arts, they tend to it's not just martial arts. They called it martial arts, but martial is practice and art is the flowing nature of it. So it's the fighting arts, the three M's they call it, the martial, the medical, and meditation. So the martial side, which is the fighting and fitness, the medical side, which is self healing for self and others, and then there's the meditational side, or consciousness side, spirituality and consciousness. And Boggie, which is how it originally was said, is sort of like the Tai Chi symbol. There's me trying to look for one, and the Tai Chi symbol is the little white and black thing, and a lot of people call it yin yang, but it's actually the two energies coming together, and it represents 10,000 things. It represents everything. So Bargi is this idea of chaos from all these 10,000 ideas. I can narrow it down to a few. I can bring it to the balance. So the name is given to me as a sort of what I am. I can be very calm and then very erratic, but also of my purpose, which is I learn 1,000 things so you can learn three.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for explaining that. And I know you have so many practices that you do. And most of these, if not all of them, are ancient practices. So why is it important and helpful to incorporate these ancient practices into modern life?
I think the interesting thing is that if anything is almost not a reverse, but there's one thing I love. I love quantum physics and epigenetics. And quantum physics is all about the particles and energy, and epigenetics is the understanding that the way you think and feel affects your physical health. So you know, like if you're happy and excited, your cells will actually start to energize and they will supercharge. If you're scared and frightened and angry, they'll start to break down. And the interesting thing with the ancient knowledge is that, if anything, epigenetics and quantum physics have literally proven the ancient knowledge to be factual. That one actually is coming together, and it's actually acknowledging the other. So the idea of like the ancient knowledge is actually as relevant now as it was 100, 200, 1,000 years ago. It's just like it may be packaged slightly differently. It's like we're still people wearing clothes. The clothes we wear now are different to the clothes we wore 1,000 years ago. And the vehicles that we use or the way we communicated may have changed slightly, but we're still doing the same things. So it's just about ancient knowledge that can be brought into modern times.
Yeah. Can you give us an example of that ancient knowledge interacting with a modern time?
There's a few, but I mean, but like for example, so in epigenetics itself is the science based about how the body works and how how the way we think and feel literally can improve our health and change our health, and even the fact that the placebo effect. So the sugar tablet, if you believe that what you're taking is real, it will affect your physical body. And what they found within the epigenetics, that the styles of energy exercise, breath work, Qigong and Tai Chi, these were actually making you feel good, which therefore, if you make you feel good, were actually enhancing your health. And so there's this, for me, there's another one where, so the ancient cultures were talking about, they were talking about the star, the sun, and they were saying it's a stargate, and that there is a dark portal inside the star itself, and there are many stars within us that are the same. Now, it's not fully known yet, but there's a physicist called Nissan Herman that has evidence that shows that the sun, that there's more and more evidence showing that there's actually a black hole in the center of the sun. And we're thinking, we're sort of told that suns collapse and create black holes. But the evidence he's showing is that it's actually the other way around. Is that we see the light of the sun, but behind that or inside that, there is actually a doorway, a black hole, or whatever you see it as. But now he's going into deeper information, which shows that our atoms themselves have black holes in the center of it. So it's this, like, not only is there a possible doorway or portal or wormhole, black hole, in our own star, and then every star is the same, but also we could have micro black holes within us, within our own atoms. And this is what the ancient knowledge talks about. The ancient knowledge talks about that we are, it even refers in Daoism, they refer to the body as being a galaxy, or, a star, a whole solar system itself. Mm-hmm. And within that solar system, there are different things that equalize each other and affect each other.
Yeah, that is so wild to think about how, as above, so below, macro, micro, it's all very interesting. And so also, for someone who's not an energy healer and who's not versed in these ancient healing practices, what do they need to know about life force energy? And is it related to any of what we had just been talking about?
Yes. So energy itself. So again, it was Nathan Harriman and other physicists that have found out that a cup full of space, there is as that in, like, if you fill that, well, inside there's energy, there's atoms, there's nothingness is energy, and inside that, a cup full of space has enough energy to evaporate all the oceans on the planet. So if there's enough energy in that cup to do that, how much energy is there in you? How much potential energy is there in your entire body? And it will go into something I'll talk about in a bit, but the whole thing is that we're far more interconnected and life force. Well, ironically, the Force, George Lucas, the Force, he actually based the understanding of the Force and the light and the dark side on Daoist philosophy, Daoism and Buddhism. And it was actually talking about, now I've found one. So what most people call the yin yang symbol, it's actually known as the Tai Chi symbol because it connects the yin and the yang together. And that's another way of saying night going into day and day going into night. But the light and the dark side of the Force is all energy. It's like the head or the tail of a coin. It is, so everything's all interconnected. And we see it as separate because we're just using a certain lens. We're only looking at it a certain way. But the further back you go, or the smaller you go, whichever way, in quantum physics, they go small. In astronomy, we go obviously big and go bigger and bigger. But you see, when you look out the bigger picture, you actually see the interconnectedness. You see how things are connected. And when you go smaller and smaller, you see actually there's what they think is space is no space at all. But I'll get to that in a second.
Okay. Yeah. And so when I was putting your interview together, I just kept feeling prompted to ask you about pushing and pulling energy. And there was no context around it, but I was like, okay, I just have to ask about it. So what does that bring up for you?
So it goes back to this symbol. It goes back to like the yin and the yang, and like the in breath and the out breath. And so the thing is, like, so we see energy as something mysterious. Especially in the West, we've made it very mysterious and very woo woo. But quantum physics talks about energy all the time. You know, you have all, energy is matter. It's like, people, I don't know if I believe in energy. Do you believe in an atom? You can't see it, but science tells you it exists. Do you believe in the Milky Way? You can't see it necessarily, but they say, so is the thing is that we have to use certain eyes or certain perspective to see certain things, but the body is designed in the way that what you can't see, you can feel. And this whole idea of pushing and pulling is like, it is like bringing your hands together, rubbing gently for a couple of breaths, and then breathing in, letting the arms expand, and breathing out and pulling them in. And after a while, you're feeling something. As a Daoist, we tend to not put words in your head. We let you sort of say what you're feeling. But the whole idea is that there is something pushing and pulling against itself. And we actually know through using certain cameras, we know there's fields of energy here. And we even know the fascia, which is like a teeth inside, in between your muscles and your skin. That fascia, which looks a little bit like a orange peel, that actually, when it's been looked at when something is dead, it just looks like tissue. But when they've actually looked at people alive, that fascia actually has light passing through it. So there is literally light radiating through your body. And therefore, when you're doing this, or you gently put your arms past your body, or in dusk, so in slightly lit room, and you just glide not straight ahead and let your eyes relax, and just glide your hands across and keep doing it. After a while, you'll see like little ripples, and you'll see the light that is within, because your eyes have different settings. And when you relax your eyes, you actually activate a different setting within your eyes. But we have this focus that's in 10% of our eye, the cones, and then the rods are the other 80% of the eye. And we're picking up so much information, but we tend to ignore it. We tend not to realize it's valuable information. So the pushing and pulling, you can do this, play with your own energy and bringing your hands across. And then there is a technique in Chinese Reiki, especially and Chinese Reiki, Shun, Xi, Shen, flowing energy spirit, and they will literally pull out shards and negative chi, or what you no longer need, out of the body. And you can do this, so breathe in and then flick it off. And people have often said when I'm doing this technique and they don't realize they're doing it, they've said that, it feels like you're pulling something from me. You're pulling, and because we're so used to thinking this is all we are, this. What we don't realize is, and in physics, we actually know our consciousness is not in here, it's outside. Consciousness comes into our body, and therefore we're an energy on the outside coming in, and we can actually feel and sense that to a certain degree. So you open up your perception, and the more that you open up what is possible, the more you actually see what is possible.
Okay. So I'm hearing you say that if you practice and you do certain things, that you'll be able to see the energy, but even if you can't see it, you can feel it in certain ways just by focusing on trying to feel it.
Because the thing is, and only through study, the more you learn, the more you study, the more you learn, the more you learn, the more you grow, the more you grow, the more you know. And what we've learned is that there are three minds. We have this one up here, but our hearts actually contain brain cells. And so there's that, our heart is also a mind, as well as there are brain cells in our guts. But our heart actually creates a bioelectric magnetic field, which when they've looked on cameras, it actually looks like a donut, Torah field. And that field is created. And our hearts are very much a feeling tool. We sense, we feel. And it's funny how we've been very much told to only focus on what's real and focus on your thoughts, not your feelings. But your feelings are an extension of your body. Your feelings, you can feel stuff, not just with your hands, but you can feel it with your own energy. And it's an interesting concept, because I don't believe in that. Well, placebo effect will teach you that what you focus on becomes a reality. So if you believe that sugar pill is the real deal, and you've got a headache and you take it, and you believe it's the real thing, and it will clear your headache. And we know through placebo, we know that over 80% of people who have had placebos, and they do placebos all the time in the medical studies, 80% of people have had a small to a great percentage of success with the placebo. So what you focus on, you make real. What you focus on, in Daoism, they say, where yi goes, qi flows. So where intent goes, your energy flows. So the more you focus on something, or the more you allow yourself to feel something, the more that will happen.
Okay. And the push and pull comes in when, well, like you mentioned, the inhale and the exhale, but is the push and pull just sort of the natural state of energy?
Yeah, what you think of a magnet? And, in essence, it's like, if you want to go by science, is that our bodies are actually electrical magnetic. Is that our heart is actually seen is like, when they've actually unwrapped, the heart is more like a coil. It actually is a whole, like, one piece organ that's actually wrapped together. And when they've actually taken it apart, is actually creating an energy. So energy goes in and energy goes out. So you have this electric and magnetic field, which is very much like the magnetic north and south. The plus and the minus, the negative and the positive. But so these two energies play with each other. And within the concept of Taoism, you have the divine masculine, the divine feminine, and there's a third. And so the divine masculine would be seen as, as the positive energy of sorts, the divine feminine with the negative energy of sorts. But we're not talking about good and bad. We're talking about one energy to another. And when you're male, female, banana, or goat, you have this positive and negative energy. You have the masculine qualities, so you're getting things done, your action side of you. We have the feminine qualities, which is the nurturing, the feeling. But there's a third, and that third is the sacred child. And the third would be, you've got the positive and the negative, and when you play it together, you get that push and pull effect. So it's the play of the energy. So it's the trinity, the positive energy, the negative energy, or the pull, the push, and the play of those two together.
Wow. Okay. Okay. And when you say Trinity, of course, I think about Christianity. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, see, what we have to remember is that, religions are aspects of knowledge. That what they are is us perceiving things in a certain way, and we translate that information. Now, there are pictures and documents showing that this is over 10,000 years old or older. So it's not Christian, it's not Buddhist, it's not Daoist. This has existed for a long time, but we see it in a certain aspect. The Trinity, when you go into the Trinity, you'll find the Trinity within the Muslim faith, within Daoism, within Buddhism, that trinity again exists. And the thing is like, well, in the Taoist concept, there is no good or bad, there just is. And so religions are great because they are an aspect of information, and it's giving you a way to look at things and to see. The difference is that when you look at the bigger picture, you don't see these things as separate or opposing. They're actually all interconnected. So, it's like, don't see what you've learned as the be all and end all, but it's definitely what you learned at the beginning. And the more you actually expand, the more you add to this, the more you grow. The one thing, I did post protection for almost 20 years. And as part of my training, I had to learn, I did religious studies, because going to different parts of the world, certain cultures, so their beliefs are fundamental to the way they think and act.
Mhm.
So that's why I did religious studies. But one thing I also learned from it is that when you go to the core belief of all these systems, they're all saying the same thing. They're all interconnected. What makes them different is that other things are being added on top, or when human involvement gets on top, they say, "Oh, this is better than that," and this is this, and this is that. And it's an interesting thing is when you look at the bigger picture, is that if things are trying to say, "Oh, this system or these people are right, and these are wrong," it's like, it's your point of view. It's where you are in the world, and it's where you are. But if we're all human, which we are, we're all on this planet, then we're all one. We're all interconnected. And ultimately, that's that's where we are all part of the same thing. And how you see it is important, but also allowing yourself to let go of certain beliefs, or at least things, see things from the bigger picture to see, can you add to this? Can you enhance that information?
Yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. And just for our listeners' sake, who maybe aren't watching on YouTube, when Sifu Boggie said this is like ancient, 10,000 years old, he was making praying hands. So that's not necessarily related just to one religion. And earlier when you were talking, you had mentioned that consciousness comes into our body. So I am curious, is consciousness the same thing as energy, or how is it related?
Again, is like listening to certain people or looking at information. The more different types of information you gather, the more you learn. Nikola Tesla, Einstein was made famous, or one of his famous sayings is that energy can't be destroyed; it can only be transformed or transferred. He was actually saying his version of what Nikola Tesla originally said, which is everything in the universe is energy. But what he was experiencing is that everything is conscious energy, and as energy is consciousness, or energy is consciousness, it cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed or transferred. Now, in 1974, when they looked at the atom, quantum physicists looked at the atom, and you have, I may be a couple of nines out, but you have 0.9999% of the atom is empty space. And they wanted to study, is it actually empty space? And when they looked at it, they actually realized that it's not actually empty, it's actually a substance, it's a field. They call it a quantum field. So every atom is connected to every other atom through the field. Now we can, therefore, you could say, you could call it the force, you could call it chi, the force, as I said. George Lucas literally based Star Wars on Daoist philosophy and Buddhist philosophy as well. But everything is connected to everything else, and science is actually stating that is that actually everything is connected. And the idea of consciousness, well, if we know that there are scientists that have done experiments on atoms, and they said that the atoms appear to have some form of consciousness. So if our atoms have some form of consciousness, we are conscious. So you have, it's almost like, many people being on a bus. You've got all these different consciousnesses all together. Now, the interesting thing about groups is individuals think separately, but when we all come together, we start to think and move together. You notice it's more with animals. They all swarm together and they move as one. And there is this thing of collective consciousness that the more of us that come together, we start to act with a pack or unity. And so even within our own body, I think, yes, energy, our thoughts and feelings, I think, have a consciousness. Energy is conscious. We are conscious. And it all interconnects and all interacts with each other.
Is consciousness an awareness, or is there more to it than that?
I think we are aware and of sorts, but you can expand your awareness. So I think consciousness and awareness is sort of the same thing in the essence of that. It is you have different parts of you can be aware, different parts of you can be conscious, but the more you open up to that, more those different sides sort of intermingle. It's a bit like colours of a rainbow that you can sort of mix those colours together and they become more interconnected. I think the easiest way sort of how I've always seen it is like, as a person, you can do things in a certain way, but you bring two people together and you have them thinking the same way, they can act as one, but separate at the same time. So is that a consciousness, or, to be aware is to put your intention in a certain way. And if you expand your awareness, for me, you're expanding into more consciousness. That makes sense.
Okay, yeah, it does. And consciousness it seems like such a complex topic. If we're just asking, what is it? It seems like, okay, there's an awareness piece, there's an energy piece, there's a human piece, but not necessarily. But how else would you define it? What other pieces?
There's Bruce Lee made it famous. There's a saying that when you put water into a cup, it becomes a cup. When you put water into a teapot, it becomes a teapot. Water can go through the smallest of gaps, and enough of it to break a dam. If you should be like anything, be like water, my friend. And I think within Daoism, they in the Tao Te Ching, which is a sort of like a Daoist guidebook, and he talks about the Tao is shapeless, it's formless, and it's forever expanding. And I think that's what we are. We are individuals of consciousness, and we're shapeless and formless, and we can go to the size of the universe, or we can shrink down. But then we're also interlaced with all these other versions, because like we're all together and we're both separate and connected at the same time. And the thing of this body, I think this body is just like a glove that we're wearing this right now, but we can, and our consciousness is wearing this glove. Just want to say the interesting science when they were looking at MRI is that they discovered that the commands for the body, or the thoughts that we were having, weren't on the inside; they were outside coming in. So our soul, or our consciousness, was actually using this body to communicate, to translate information through. So that goes into, well, then what are we? Well, I think we are formless, we are shapeless, we are like water, but we're so right now we can only see and feel this. And we got so used to, there's one thing we know, that what you believe becomes your reality. That within psychology, we know that if a runner imagines going for a run and sets himself up for the run, and in their head imagines everything they would do for a run and starts running, their heartbeat increases. They start to sweat. Their body starts to react. So in psychology, we know that our mind can't tell the difference between what we imagine and what is real. And so if you've got so used to, there have been times where a child has grown up with wolves and then acts and act and behave like a wall because that's all they know. And I think it's the same for us, is that right now all we know is this form. And so that's all we can focus on. But for me, what Taoism sort of teaches you, but look beyond that. What are you? And can you feel beyond that? Can you sense beyond that? Can you use your other abilities? And it's that idea of being like a child when we were children. Our imaginations were immense, and we played and we did different things. But as we became adults, we started to restrict ourselves more and more and think, oh no, we can only do this and we can only do that. And all our inventions, all the things around us, they weren't created by people who believed they couldn't. They were created by people who believed, how can I? How can I create this? How can I do that? How the light bulbs, energy, cars, wheels. It was all created by people who stepped outside the box and looked at a bigger picture to create that thing. It wasn't created by people who limited themselves. That, oh no, that's not possible. That's not feasible.
I think one of the main things I'm taking from everything you just said is that consciousness is sort of like the fabric of existence, and it's got limitless aspects of itself that can be experienced from different perspectives.
Yeah. And you are that. You are part of that, I've done things called remote viewing, that's a whole wormhole all on its own, but it's a whole concept. Remote viewing is that everything is one and that nothing is outside of you. So if that is true, then even from your room, you can take your awareness and put it in another location, somewhere in the world or somewhere in the universe, and you can see that information. Now, remote viewing does it in the way of, like, so we'd normally call that out like astral projection or psychic projection, but remote viewing does it in the way of, you don't know where you're going. All you're given is a number. There's letters and numbers. It's like an address or a phone number or an email address. You're given the email address, and you don't even see it. It's actually in an envelope, and you're just focusing your awareness on that email address that you can't see in the envelope, and then it will take you to somewhere in the universe. So what it's showing, and this remote viewing, you have to look up remote viewing. It's it's been used in business. I know the FT 500, 100 index businesses that use remote viewing to find gold, diamonds, oil, so many different things. It's been used in the spying trade. The CIA used it for 20 years, then said it doesn't work after 20 years of using it. That's telling you something. So it's this concept that remote viewing boils down to, you are the universe. And therefore, if you are the universe, you can go to anywhere in the universe, and it does it in a way that proves you're not making it up. You don't know what's on there. So anything you come up with is purely just through your own feelings and through your own consciousness. And then it's down to the observer who's with you, that they will look at that information and they will relate what you're seeing. So that whole idea is that we are so much more than we think we are right now.
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask you a little bit more about remote viewing? Like, how do you even begin to do it? I feel like you have to believe that you can.
Well, yes and no. The interesting thing with remote viewing, and one of the people who taught me, he was a hardcore skeptic. He very much believed, if I can't, his terminology, if I can't slap it, if I can't hit it, it doesn't exist. So, like, in essence of, he believes in solid objects. He was a martial artist as well, and it was that understanding. But what it does, it sort of disconnects your ego, your monkey mind. So your forebrain, we know we have 60 to 90,000 thoughts in the frontal lobe of our brain. every single day. And that very much keeps us in this reality. That very much keep us, like we're worrying about the bills or the past, the present. We're worrying about what we're going to have for dinner. And we're spending so much energy in the forebrain that we don't actually get to expand. One of the techniques is to actually bring you back, pull you out of the forebrain and help you disconnect from that and allow you just to observe, just to feel what's beyond time and space, what's beyond, rather than just focusing on here and this here and now, it's allow you to expand further. So the whole idea of remote viewing is that you just want to relax, and quite a lot of them will use certain sounds, certain frequencies, and the whole idea is that it's what you're experiencing using the senses you have inside you, is that you can you'll just start to describe what this thing is, rather than in astral projection, we go, oh, I'm leaving the body, I'm shooting off into space, and I'm going to Mars. Well, Mars and you are in the same place. Mars and you are in the same place. Like, everything is interconnected, and if everything is interconnected, that means Mars and here is actually one. And because it's all one, you don't have to travel there. It's already part of you. It's the easiest way to explain it is have a piece of paper, have A on the paper and B on the paper, A on one end, B on the other, and you fold that paper in two and you connect the 2 points. So by folding reality in on itself, point A, which is on one side of the paper, and point B, which is on the other, become, and I'm back to putting two hands together, which is another indication, is two palms together, or in Japanese, gachio, hands together, it becomes one, it becomes a unit.
Whoa. Okay. So with your mind, though, how do you bend reality so that you can be there?
As Yoda said, which actually comes from a British quote, don't try, do. It's a case of, too often we say, I try and it's too hard. Is that rather than the whole, because you don't know where you're going and what you're doing, all you're focusing on is letting go, breathing, allowing yourself to expand, like very much the Daoist version of remote viewing is I breathe in, I feel my body expand, I breathe out, I settle back down. And I keep doing that. And every time I expand, I feel myself, or I just allow myself to get bigger and bigger, and the energy to go further and further, my senses to go further and further. And I just keep going on that. I just keep expanding myself, expanding my awareness. I don't focus on what am I focusing on. I just allow myself to feel what I feel, see what I see, hear what I hear, and know what I know. So it's just more about doing, just being that continuous expansion, coming back, expanding out, coming back and expanding out.
Wow. Okay. So back to the push and pull, even. That's so interesting. Yes, okay. Okay. I'm trying to think of where to go from here. And what's sort of stirring is when we are so distracted by our humanness, we become disconnected from this being. And so what happens when a critical mass of individuals, like say a whole country or half of the world, are disconnected from this universal energy? What impact does that have on us?
Well, let's flip that. So the FBI, your wonderful country, the FBI did experiments back in the 80s and 90s where they got a group of meditators together, either yogis, Qigong practitioners, people who meditated, and they got them to focus on peace and love and expanding their energy. And what they found, they started off with 20 or 30, and the amount of people slowly got bigger and bigger. And what they found that when they had a group of people in the second to last experiment was in the capital Washington, the capital Washington, and they had, I think it was 2,000 meditators focusing on peace and love for that weekend. So they were just meditating and expanding their energy and focusing on peace and love. And the crime rate dropped by 20 to, some say 20%, some say more than that. And it was a very impactful. There was no other reason for it. There was no police operations going on in the capital, but the crime rate dropped by around about 20%. They did another experiment when they got 7,000 people worldwide to do the same thing, and then what happened over that 2-day period? It actually increased up to 70%. That the acts of crime and acts of terror worldwide dropped by 70%. And this is an FBI case study. So we know that when a small group of people come together and focus on positivity, things dramatically happen. So allow yourself to think, well, if that happens when we're positive, what does happen when we're negative? What does happen when because we know in psychology that a group of people can come together, and where they would normally be very rational, they can be very irrational as a group, and people can do very negative things, and you'll hear a group of people, in like riots and whatnot, they'll say, I don't know what came over me. That's not normally what I'm like. But when we come as a collective, and that energy or that intent is of a certain thing, it joins people together and it connects people, and people as a group will act in a certain way. So we know what happens when we come together in a positive light. Take from that so therefore what we know when a group of people are coming together in a negative light, negative things can happen. So we can change reality just by our intent, and then we come together, that intensifies that result.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And so I'm thinking about the political climate in the United States right now. And I'm like, I feel like everybody's so disconnected. How do we reconnect? Even if we're not energy workers or, into quantum physics or any of those things, how do we use these principles to shift what's happening for the better?
I think the biggest thing that we seem to miss is that we are creators. That everything in your life that's going on, to a degree, whether the biggest thing you did was move into that location or be with a certain person, we created all of that. We are part of that. So, it is that we create the reality that we're in. And if we can create one reality, that means we can create another. That I think the biggest thing is that we've allowed ourselves to believe that we can't change stuff, but you can. You can change things. You may only be able to change one little thing, but you can change. And if you change one thing, you can do that and repeat that over and over again, and you can change many things. I love the story of the man walking on the beach, and he sees on the beach that there are thousands of starfish on the beach, and there's a little girl, and she's picking up a starfish, she's saying something, and then she's putting it back in the water. And the man goes over and says, "What are you doing?" And she says, "Saving starfish." And he says, "But there's thousands of starfish. You can't save them all." And she picks up one and she says, "But I can save this one, and I can save this one, and I can save this one." And, like taking that, or like people talk about, a football field, or, an American football field is full of rubbish. And it's like, it's too much rubbish for one person. But you can pick up one piece and keep doing that. And if other people help you, you will clear more and more. And it's the whole idea is that when we say we can't do something, we're actually sorry, but we're actually saying we won't. We can do something. There is always something you can do. There is always things that you can change. And if you think you can't, it's only because you're looking at that narrow perspective. If you're coming, the more people that actually help each other or come together and help each other, one person can't lift a boulder, but 20 people could, 100 people definitely could. So it's the whole idea of, if we start coming together as a unity, we start helping each other rather than seeing each other's differences. If we actually look for each other's similarities, and how, the simple thing is, help thy neighbor, do to others as you want to do to yourself. You want others to help you, help somebody else, and then continue that and pass that forward.
Wonderful. Well, Sifu, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And before we wrap up, I want to make sure, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think is important to share?
One of the things I deal with a lot is people with stress and anxiety and pain. Biggest thing in the Eastern philosophy is that dis-ease is stagnation, and stagnation comes from lack of movement. So when we're stiff, and whether we're talking physically, emotionally, or energetically, when we're stiff and rigid, everything starts to clog up, everything starts to block and break down. So, those who've seen me on the video, or those who have ever seen me on Facebook or YouTube or wherever, I'm always moving about. Right now, I'm sitting on a yoga ball, rolling about. And when you flow, we talked about the divine feminine, the divine masculine, the sacred child. When you allow yourself to play and move, you allow yourself to break up that stagnation, that dis-ease. So by moving, by flowing, and same with your imagination, allow your imagination to play, to expand, and you will grow, and you will flow. And when you breathe and you expand your belly, your diaphragm fully opens up, and your body fills up with oxygen, chi. And when you pull your belly in, you expel what you no longer need. So we call that belly breathing. Breathing in, let the belly expand. Breathing out, pull that belly in. And when you let your body do the same, you start pulling and pushing. You expand and contract. You're actually becoming a dynamo. You're allowing the energy to flow. And if things are getting a bit too stressful, try looking up. Because one thing is known in psychology is when we look up, the forebrain, the monkey mind, 60 to 90,000 thoughts, when we look up, we start to actually drain the fluids from the brain and bring it down the spine and down the body. So looking up actually stops you focusing in monkey mind and actually allows you to come back to back to the middle of the brain and back into the body. So it will take you out of all that worry and concern.
Awesome. That is such a wonderful takeaway for our listeners and viewers today. And if they want to find more of your work and what you do, where can they go?
Sifu Boggie, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, even LinkedIn. But I also have a mysteries tool, my own tool, where I mix the ancient knowledge with epigenetics and philosophy, and also quantum physics. And it is called, and the link will be down below, but it's called shundao.ustream.io. And that is sort of like if Netflix and Facebook were to have a baby, it will sort of be my website with lots of videos, but it's also interactive, and you can actually ask a question, or you want to know something, and the next class I do, I can actually focus on that thing you've asked and do an exercise or technique for that.
Awesome. Okay. Yes. And like Sifu said, the links will be in the show notes and down below. So go check those out. And Sifu, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Enjoyed it immensely.
Thanks for tuning in. Check out more of our episodes here and at humanamplified.com. Remember to subscribe.